In a regular garage in Miami, one man is either going to destroy Bugatti's entire argument or prove them right. The Bugatti Chiron has been sitting in two pieces for months. The front half on one side of the shop, the rear subframe with its W16 engine on the other. Bugatti CEO said it publicly, on the record. Reassembling this car outside of their factory is impossible. Matt Armstrong just landed in Miami. But here's what nobody is talking about. The hardest part of this rebuild isn't the engine. It isn't the gearbox. It isn't even the 14 titanium bolts that hold the front and rear of the car together. The hardest part is a single bracket, a cast metal gearbox mounting bracket that cracked under load. That one component is why this car was split in the first place. Every decision made over the past several months has been built around. And this weekend, Matt has to decide which version of that bracket goes back into a $3 million car. Get it wrong, and the car comes apart again. I want to tell you something about reassembly that most mechanics will never say out loud. Taking a car apart is easy. Any person with enough patience and the right tools can remove bolts until a vehicle is in pieces. Disassembly follows gravity. It follows logic. If something won't come apart, you're probably doing something wrong, and the car tells you immediately. Reassembly is the opposite. Reassembly requires you to know, before you ever pick up a wrench, exactly what order everything goes back in. Because on a car like the Chiron, certain components physically cannot be installed if others are already in place. Miss the sequence by one step, and you're taking it apart again from that point forward. Bugatti refused to give Matt the assembly sequence. So here is the question that actually matters this weekend. Not can Matt put the Chiron back together. The real question is, did he document the disassembly carefully enough that the reassembly can follow it in reverse? Every photograph taken before a connector was unplugged. Every wiring loom position noted. Every bracket location recorded. Every torque sequence written down. That documentation, not factory training, not a Bugatti service manual, is the only guide Matt has for putting this car back together. In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you exactly why that approach either works perfectly or fails in a way that can't be fixed without starting over. Let's start with the bracket, because everything this weekend depends on it. The gearbox mounting bracket on a Bugatti Chiron is not a simple part. It's the structural interface between the 7-speed dual-clutch gearbox and the rear subframe, the single point where all the torque produced by a 16-cylinder engine on its way to the rear wheels transfers through the chassis. It is one of the most load-intensive connection points on the car. The original bracket is cast poured metal shaped in a mold rather than cut from solid material. Casting is an efficient manufacturing process for complex shapes, but cast components carry a weakness that machined parts don't. During the casting process, microscopic air pockets can become trapped inside the material. They're invisible from the outside, but under repeated load cycles, under the kind of forces a W16 engine generates thousands of times per journey, those internal voids create stress concentrations that slowly, invisibly grow until the crack reaches the surface and the bracket fails. That is exactly what happened to this Chiron. But here's what Matt's team did that Bugatti never would. They didn't simply replicate the original bracket. They improved it. The replacement was CNC machined, cut from solid billet metal by computer-controlled tools, with tolerances measured in hundredths of a millimeter. No casting voids, no internal stress concentrations. A component that isn't just equivalent to the original, it's structurally superior to it. Bugatti's cast bracket failed under normal use. Matt's machined replacement is engineered to handle the same loads with a safety margin the original never had. The critics said Matt wouldn't be able to source parts. Instead, he engineered better ones. But the bracket alone isn't the whole story. Installing it means bringing the front and rear of the car back together. And that reunion, 14 titanium bolts connecting the front monocoque to the rear subframe, is where the real technical challenge begins. 14 titanium bolts. That is all that holds the front half of a Bugatti Chiron to the rear half. 14 bolts connecting the carbon fiber monocoque, the survival cell that protects the driver, to the rear subframe carrying the engine, gearbox, and suspension. Those 14 bolts must be torqued to exact specification in a specific sequence. Not approximately right, exactly right. Here's why that matters in a way most people never consider. Torque specifications on structural fasteners aren't arbitrary numbers. They're calculated from the material properties of the bolt, the clamping force required, the thread engagement length, and the loads the joint will experience in service. Under torque those 14 bolts, and the joint fails to develop the clamping force the engineers designed for. The front and rear of the car begin to move relative to each other under load, microscopically at first, then progressively more, until either the bolts fatigue or the joint fails completely. Over-torque them, apply more force than specified, and you stretch the bolt past its elastic limit. A bolt that's been over-torqued doesn't spring back. It stays stretched, and a stretched bolt doesn't generate the clamping force it was designed to produce. The joint is now underclamped, exactly as if you'd under-torqued it in the first place. The correct exact torque values for titanium fasteners on a carbon fiber structure are not in any document you can buy. They're in Bugatti's proprietary service documentation, which they refuse to share. Matt had to develop that knowledge independently through research, through engineering first principles, and through a network of specialists who have worked at this level and understand what structural fasteners on hypercars actually require, and that is something the doubters will never acknowledge. Bugatti's refusal to provide service documentation didn't stop this rebuild. It forced Matt to develop a deeper understanding of the engineering than a factory technician following a manual ever would. A factory technician does what the manual says. Matt had to understand why the manual says it and derive the answer from first principles when no manual was available. That is not a limitation. It is a different and arguably more complete form of knowledge. The critics have been consistent throughout this build. Disassembly was the easy part, they said. Reassembly will expose the limitations. Without factory training and Bugatti's proprietary tooling, putting this car back together correctly is beyond the capability of an independent builder. That argument sounds reasonable. It even sounds correct to people who haven't been watching what actually happened during this build. Matt did not disassemble this Chiron carelessly. He didn't remove bolts until the car was in pieces and set those pieces aside without a record. Every connection point was photographed before disconnection. Every wiring plug was labeled. Every bracket position was noted. Every torque sequence was recorded. That documentation isn't a substitute for a factory service manual. In several important ways, it's more valuable because it's specific to this exact car, in this exact state, after this exact damage, with these exact custom components replacing the ones that failed. A factory service manual describes how to assemble a standard Chiron. This car is no longer a standard Chiron. The gearbox bracket is CNC billet instead of cast. The exhaust is a bespoke valvetronic unit rather than the factory system. The radiator mounting was independently engineered with superior welding. A factory manual would actually be wrong for this car in several places. Matt's documentation is right because it describes this specific vehicle. That's the thing nobody says out loud about this rebuild. The independence that Bugatti tried to use against Matt, the absence of factory support, factory tools, factory documentation, forced the development of documentation that is more accurate for this specific car than anything Bugatti could have provided. If Matt reassembles this Chiron and gets it running this weekend, two things change. The first is obvious. The car runs. A rebuild that Bugatti's own CEO called impossible produces a functioning vehicle. Documented. Permanent. Impossible to dispute. The second change is the one that matters for years afterward. Bugatti's argument, the argument that every luxury manufacturer uses to justify parts embargoes, service exclusivity, and restrictions on independent repair, rests on a single claim: that independent builders lack the capability to work on these cars properly. Not the tools, not the parts, the capability, the knowledge, the understanding of what these cars require and how to deliver it. If Matt gets this Chiron running, that claim doesn't just weaken, it collapses, because the documented evidence of this rebuild, step by step, component by component, decision by decision, will show exactly how an independent builder approached a repair that a manufacturer declared impossible. And that documentation will be available to every builder who comes after. Every owner who refuses to accept that their car can't be repaired without manufacturer permission. Every lawyer arguing right to repair legislation. Every regulator asking whether parts monopolies actually serve consumer interests. This weekend in Miami is not just about one car. It's about whether the precedent gets set, whether the evidence exists, whether the argument manufacturers have been using to control their vehicles after the sale gets dismantled by video documentation of someone doing the exact thing they said couldn't be done. Matt isn't just reassembling a Bugatti Chiron. He's reassembling the argument. The car is split. The bracket decision is being made. The 14 titanium bolts are waiting. Matt documented everything. He engineered better parts where Bugatti's failed. He built a network of specialists who filled every gap that manufacturer refusal created. He didn't need Bugatti. And this weekend, in front of millions of people watching, he's going to prove it. Subscribe and turn notifications on, because the moment that W16 starts for the first time after reassembly, the moment an engine that Bugatti said would never run outside their factory fires up in a regular garage in Miami, that sound isn't just an engine starting. That sound is the argument ending.